Hey guys, welcome to my pool plan video where I take a look at the upcoming arc and sort of make some plans on whether or not to pull or skip the upcoming banners. In this video, I'll be covering the arc where Cid Raines will be featured as the synergy character, and you can refer to the cropped infographic on the left hand side of the slide, which was derived from the thewereotter's global forecast to see which events these are. As always, I will also be including a link to the full forecast in the video description, so do check it out as well. First up, just a quick recap on how I did in the last arc, which was Celes's FRBT arc. Overall, there were only 3 events and 4 overall banners, and as you can see, I really only pulled on the very first banner, which was the banner that features Celes's FR and BT. So I actually started off with about 70 tickets, and the only reason why I did that was because I had to redeem a couple of tickets from my inbox, as well as from the co-op shop as well, and the hunt token shop. So I went in for 70 tickets, got absolutely nothing, and then I went straight with gems. At 75k gems, I did manage to finally snag her FR, and luckily I managed to get her burst weapon along the way. I did have to spend 12 high power stones in total, which really crippled my high power stone stash just to max Celes out, but I was pretty happy overall because she's really quite strong, I have to say, and she's one of those few tanks that actually have access to BT plus aura as well, and she can actually even solo quite a number of stages on her own. Coming to Aranya's banner, I skipped that banner entirely, partly because I wasn't entirely interested in using Aranya as a DPS character, and partly also because I'm fully out of high power stones at that point in the game. Finally, we did have Dorgan's event with the release of Dorgan and his FR weapon. Admittedly, I was in a very big dilemma on whether or not to pull. Now, I know I did mention in my last pool plan video that I wanted to throw tickets for Dorgan. One issue I had is that at that point I was still pretty low on high power stones. I had to spend more than I wanted to max out Celes's FR, and if I did go in for tickets with Dorgan, it's very likely that you just get one copy of his FR, and you then need to spend 12 more high power stones to max it out, and I didn't really feel that I wanted to spend that much high power stones considering that Cid Raines is just around the corner. The other reason why I changed my mind and decided to skip Dorgan at the end of the day is because I was actually sort of team building together to try to see how I can build a team around Dorgan, because that's what you really need to do with him. He shines the best when you can build a team that capitalizes on breaks so that you can trigger his full up attacks multiple times throughout the fight. And I realized that I actually don't have a lot of the key characters that Dorgan can potentially combo off with. I do have Sephiroth's BT, but it's only at base, and I don't want to green Sephiroth. I don't have Aranya's FR, I don't have Vayne's FR, Vayne's BT is also at base, I don't have Ardyn's FR, and I don't even have Ardyn's BT weapon, and I don't even have Gabran's FR as well. So a lot of the characters that are pretty good at breaking the enemies, I don't have them really fully built, and or at the very least they would require BT ingots to fully build them. And the thought of building them just so that I can make use of Dorgan seems pretty much a stretch for me at this point of the game. I think it's probably a wiser choice to just skip Dorgan altogether. That way I save all my BT ingots materials, I can save my high power stones for Dorgan, and of course I can save my tickets for Cid Raines as well. So in the end I just decided to skip Dorgan altogether. Alright, so coming to the first event on Cid Raines' arc, which is the Spiritus Wall of Illusion Pandemonium. Right here we'll be getting 2 banners with different characters featured. The first will be featuring of course Cid Raines as well as his FR and BT weapon, as well as banner mates in Lulu and Layla. The second banner will feature a different BT character in Emperor, and we'll have Zande and Porom in Bannermates. First things first, I really love Cid Raines. Back in the day when he was first released, if you've watched some of my videos way back then, you realize how much I really used Cid Raines during that time. Used him over so many events that it's really insane, got a lot of value out of him. And back then his turn manipulation and launches were really bonkers in terms of damage. With this event he does get a rework, but the rework isn't really a lot. His S1 and S2 now has 2 HP dumps, which may not seem like much, but don't forget that both his S1 and S2 also is a guaranteed launch, so you essentially get 2 more HP dumps from that. His S1 framed buff now is 2 turns longer, which may not sound like a lot, but it really helps a lot because one of the issues he had way back then is buff management. This buff lasting 2 turns longer essentially means that you don't need to press his S1 as often before, and you can use his other skills more often. His BT and FR is pretty good, but there is a little bit of drawback and it is a little bit clunky, and I'll go through why. First off, regarding his BT aura, when you use his BT plus or BT finisher, he gets a 6 turn BT aura that provides the party with brave damage plus 50%, HP damage plus 30% with a further 20% during launch, brave cap up plus 50%, HP cap up plus 30% with also another further 20% during launch. And this also means that overall launch damage while Cid Raines' BT aura is up is going to be pretty high. And lastly, you get a 30% party-wide brave gain up. Now the key thing about his BT aura is that while his BT aura is active, his impact strike, that is the attack that he does as a follow-up during launch right at the end, will be changed to another new attack called Seraphic Charge. And that attack is pretty powerful. It does 7 HP dumps. Don't forget that this is not an ability on its own, this is just a launch follow-up attack. So say for example, if you use his S2 to turn manipulate and launch, that attack does 2 HP dumps. You have your 2 characters following up, which is another 2 HP dumps, and then Cid Raines will do Seraphic Charge at the end for another 7 HP dumps. That is a 11 HP dump total just coming from his S2 attack. And obviously you get more HP dumps if you use his EX or LD instead. His Seraphic Charge, similar to Impact Strike, also ignores the enemy's defense. Coming to Cid Raines' newly released Force Weapon, his Force Weapon also turn manipulates in a way similar to his LD and will always lead to a launch. As expected, his force time effects is very centric towards launches. Anytime you launch an enemy, you get plus 20% force gauge bonus. When Cid Raines himself launches an enemy, he gets a further 10% for a total of 30%. And anytime you participate in a launch chase, you get plus 20% per ally. So this caps out at 3, assuming that Cid Raines himself does either his Impact Strike or Seraphic Charge at the end for a total of 60%. This means that whenever Cid Raines launch an enemy, you should expect full follow-up, and altogether this totals for himself 90% during his turn. Plus the usual, I guess 5% if you have his force levels maxed. Now overall I think it is pretty decent, but as I briefly alluded to earlier, there is a little bit of drawback and it is a little bit clunky. The main reason for that is that his BT aura lasts 6 turns only, which is a really big shame. I think if they made his BT aura 8 turns or maybe at least 7 turns, his kit is actually going to be much better. 6 turns does provide limitations, mainly because when you use BT plus, every character's BT plus attack, including Cid Raines, cannot launch the enemy. So just imagine a scenario, where you normally want to go BT plus directly into BT mode, because the 6 turns really only is enough to last for one entire BT mode, and you don't have anything extra beyond that because one BT mode has 6 attacks in it. This means that normally you would probably want to use his force attack before his BT plus, But if you do so, it then means that you'll be using his BT plus inside his force time, and that attack doesn't launch, which means that in that one turn when you use his BT plus, you won't get any force time bonuses because you're not doing any launch. If on the other hand you do his BT plus before force time, before his force attack, this means that his force attack itself will eat one turn of his BT aura, and that means that the most you can do is enter BT mode with just 5 turns of his BT aura, so one of his attacks will not benefit from Seraphic Charge. Lastly, his force attack having turn manipulation for the entire party can also be a drawback. In most scenarios, you would probably normally want to use Luna Freya's Quick Prayer so that any FRBT character can go FR into BT plus and directly into BT mode, so you don't have to waste precious force time turns. The problem is that Cid Raines force attack turn manipulates does mean that you do need to have your other party members take turns and eat away at your precious force time before Cid Raines can go into BT mode. And I've seen a couple of videos. There was one video from Celes that tried to do Quick Prayer on Cid Raines. Unfortunately, even if he does have Quick Prayer up, his turn manipulation will still kick in, and your other party members will still need to act before Cid Raines can get his instant turn. Obviously, this isn't ideal because other party members taking turns during Cid Raines FR would mean that they benefit from a lower force gauge bonus because they don't get the 10% that Cid Raines will get, and when they launch an enemy you only get 2 follow-ups, so you only get a total of 60% per ally turn. So all in all, I wouldn't really say that Cid Raines FRBT and rework is meta, because we do have powerhouses like Tifa and Rinoa still, which would probably outperform Cid Raines from a pure DPS perspective. That being said, if you've never pulled for Cid Raines before, I highly recommend to at least pull for Cid Raines' LD. His LD call is still, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best, utility LD calls in the game, because it is the only LD call that allows you to launch every single turn in a BT mode. Not to mention that both his call, his base call and LD call also carries turn manipulation, and his call is only one of 2 call abilities in the entire game that has turn manipulation, the other being Onion Knight's LD call. So if you aren't interested in Cid Raines FR or BT, I wouldn't really blame you for skipping, but I think at this point of the game, skipping his LD would probably be for want of a better word, a poor choice, a poor decision to make, because his LD call is really chock full of utility. Now, as far as all the other characters featured across these 2 banners, there's really nothing much to say about them. I think only Xande himself will receive a rework, and even after the rework, there's really nothing much to shout about Xande, and the rest of the characters are pretty outdated. My plans here is going for Cid Raines' FR, and I know I did say that his FR is pretty clunky, but the main reason is I like his animation, and I really like Cid Raines overall as a character. As a tribute to how much he helped me out way back in the day, I think I should at least give him the pulls that he deserves. I'm still a bit undecided about his BT, but I may consider tokening his BT if I don't get it along the way to his FR, but I don't really plan on using gems. I want to use tickets here so that I can start claiming some tickets from some of the more recent co-op shops. Next up is Enna Kros' Lost Chapters. Enna Kros herself will receive a rework where her Omega God now comes with an HP damage cap up plus 300%. Her self, Dark and Holy Enchant, is now sort of like a true enchant, meaning that if you have any other enchanters as well, her Dark and Holy Enchant will still apply. And if her attack is already innately Dark or Holy, it gets a further boost from her self, Dark and Holy Enchant, in terms of brave damage. She'll get a slight reduction in Brave consumption use, similar to how Iroha X. Her EX will now start with a full meter, and I guess very importantly, her LD after the rework will be 8 HP dumps from Omega God, which is pretty powerful, I have to say. Enna Kros herself will also get a new FR, and upon use it will delete all enemies' turn. Her force type effects are, if you use a holy or dark elemental attack, you get a 20% boost for each. So for herself, she obviously does both the elements, so she'll fulfill both and get 40%. If you deal HP damage while your Brave is kept at 100% or higher max Brave, you get a plus 40% boost to the force gauge bonus. And lastly, while her force time is up, your party elemental weakness will get a bonus plus 50% HP damage done and plus 50% Brave cap up. I'm not overly impressed with Enna Kros FR. It's not really bad per se, it's just that the force gauge bonus that it gets is pretty on par with very recent units, and holy and dark elemental attacks itself are pretty uncommon in the game. So other than Enna Kros herself, other characters will struggle to fulfill all the force conditionals. Overall, in my opinion, I think the biggest attraction for Enna Kros kit lies in her LD. After rework, her LD hits for a crap ton of damage, and if you use it, when you have high force percentages up, you will see extremely large numbers on the screen. So she will pair very well with generalist force time users such as Hope, especially those that can supercharge the force gauge percentage or force gauge bonus percentage to an extremely high amount before she starts using her LD. Because of that, I don't really think that you need Enna Kros FR at all. And since I already do have all her kit, including her LD, just of course minus her FR, I plan to actually just skip this banner. And I will probably mostly only use her in party setups where she'll be spamming her LD once I reach very high force time bonus percentages. Final event is a raid event featuring Lilisette's newly released FR. Lilisette herself will also be getting a rework, but I had a quick look at the rework that she gets, and nothing really changes in how her kit functions. The rework mainly serves to increase her damage so that she's more in line with the current meta. She will get additional skill uses, I believe +2 to both her S1 and S2, and this increases her longevity. Her whirling age and her EX damage has also been significantly boosted, but it's not anything crazy or more than what we typically see in recent units. Lilisette gets a new force weapon. Upon use, it batteries the entire party before doing damage, and while her force time is up, whenever you attack a debuffed enemy, you get a +5% per debuff to a maximum of 40% if there are 8 debuffs on the enemy. If you deal critical damage during your turn, you get a +30%. Also, while her force time is up, all enemies get a -30% penalty to their speed stat, and all players' Brave Gain gets an additional +30%. Her force conditionals are pretty easy to meet because Lilisette herself can inflict a range of debuffs on the enemy, so you should have no problem getting the +40% on the first conditional, and of course dealing critical damage on turn is extremely easy to do, so you should typically expect to see a +70% per turn regardless of which party member acts during Lilisette's force time. In my opinion, I think this then makes it a very, user-friendly force time. Particularly, of course, if you are someone pretty new to the game and you don't have a lot of force time weapons, this can be a pretty decent force because it can function fairly well regardless of who else you have in your party. Regarding the rest of Lilisette's kit, though, I'm not really particularly impressed. So the biggest drawback, I think, is that you obviously need her in your main party if you want to capitalize on your force time, and I'm not very sure whether she's worth one of your party slots when you can only fit in 3 party members overall. Again, maybe more so for newer players when your roster isn't that that big to begin with. In terms of my plans, assuming that I still have a healthy amount of tickets by this stage, so if I didn't spend a lot on Cid Raines' banner, I will probably actually go in with tickets on the secondary banner featuring Jagran's BT if I already have Cid Raines' burst weapon by this point. But the reasoning behind why I want to pull is mainly for collection purposes. I don't actually have Lilisette's LD, I skipped it the first time around, and I don't have any of Jagran's weapons, not even his 35 CP, his 15 CP isn't even ML beat, and I obviously don't have Jagran's EX or LD. So on that context, the secondary banner is a so-called value banner for me, because there's bound to be a lot of weapons that I don't have that I can get while I pull, and I am actually aiming mainly for Lilisette's LD and not her FR, because at least that way I get access to Lilisette LD call. Anything I get along the way until I get her LD, I will treat as a good bonus and will sort of supplement my current collection of weapons. If I do get very unlucky on Cid Raines' banner and I have to throw a large chunk of tickets there, then I may actually even choose to skip this banner altogether. On this part of the video, I'll be giving my opinion, and again I can't stress that enough, it's really just an opinion on which characters I think will provide good value. Across all the banners on this arc, I think there are only 3 noteworthy characters, and those are Cid Raines, Enna Kros, and Lilisette. Out of those 3, I put Cid Raines on the good value category, and the main reason for that is actually not because of his BT or his FR weapon, it's really because of his LD weapon. Cid Raines' LD call ability is one of the most used LD calls in the game, if not probably the most used. And personally, I rate his call ability the best in the current game, just due to the sheer utility that you can get and the fact that really enables you to launch every single turn during burst mode, which sort of fits into the current era in Shinryu where you want to capitalize force time into BT mode most of the time. No other call ability can do that in the game, so if you don't have Cid Raines' LD, I highly recommend to at least pull until you get his LD and build him so that you get access to his LD call ability. His force weapon and BT certainly isn't bad, and of course if you did score them, then you could potentially build him up to his BT plus as well. That's what I personally plan on doing, but do not expect that he will perform at the same level as, say, compared to Rinoa or Tifa. Sadly, I think one of the drawbacks about his newly released burst weapon is that the duration is just too short at 6 turns, and it makes it very clunky to use both his force weapon or force time and BT in one run. It would be, I guess, an entirely different scenario altogether if his BT aura lasts, say for example 8 turns, where you then have room to get in 1 or 2 more attacks, or you can potentially use his BT plus before his force attack, and that way you still get the full use of his seraphic charge during his burst mode. Unfortunately though, at the current iteration, you do have to make sort of like a compromise or a sacrifice where there will be 1 or maybe 2 turns in his force time that will be suboptimal in terms of increasing his force bonus percentages. Later on, Cid Raines will reappear and he'll get his force echo, and his force time then is pretty good because when he gets access to force echo, his force time also makes it that every party member will launch during his force time, sort of similar to Selfie's LD debuff, except that this time it's tied to Cid Raines' force time aura. This time though, that utility in that the party members being able to launch guaranteed is not going to be available, will only be released during his force echo. Next up, we have Enna Kros, and Enna Kros, I put her mainly in the role fulfillment category. She would function, I guess, fairly well as a DPS character with additional ability to delete enemies' turns via her EX ability. If you did pull for Hope's FR, I would recommend to at least consider pulling for Enna Kros LD because she really combos extremely well with Hope. But if you feel pretty comfortable with your DPS roster, then by no means is Enna Kros really necessary at this point of the game. Lastly, I put in Lilisette here, but I think Lilisette is even to a smaller degree than Enna Kros herself. Honestly, I really don't see myself using much of Lilisette in my main party. Potentially there may be some use of her LD call ability, but I think overall, at this point we have access to quite a number of force weapons already, and there's probably many other force weapons that you want to use because at least then you don't have to bring Lilisette into your main party. I really see her kit as being very beginner friendly because the minus 30% speed in her force time also means that the bosses act less frequently. May not be very attractive to, I guess, more veteran players who have access to more characters because most of the time nowadays you can just no boss turn the fight, and then you can win in just one force time before the bosses act, so the speed minus 30% doesn't really matter. But when you are fairly new and you don't have a lot of characters in your roster, most of the fights are going to be a trade-off between you taking turns and the enemies taking turns, and in that kind of scenario, having a force time with very easy to meet conditionals and having the minus 30% speed to further slow down and cripple the enemy on top of all of Lilisette's debuffs can be very handy to have. Anyway, that's it for this video. In summary, I plan to throw tickets to chase Cid Raines' FR and BT. I may token his burst weapon depending on how I do with his force weapon, but I will probably be spending tickets until I get at least 2 or maybe 3 copies of his force weapon so that I can save on high power stones. I will definitely be skipping Enna Kros banner. I may potentially throw tickets to chase Lilisette's LD, and that's mainly for collection purposes and the fact that the banner is a value banner for me. But if I had to blow a large chunk of my stash for Cid Raines, then I may eventually actually skip Lilisette altogether, but let's see. Thanks for watching. I hope this video has been helpful, and if you enjoy the content, do leave a like, comment and subscribe. It really helps a lot. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!